It is 20 kilometers across. To place that in context, the island of Manhattan is approximately 22 kilometers long. This object is smaller than a city borough. It has a mass of 1.5 times that of our Sun. Compressed, folded, crushed by the terminal gravitational collapse of a star that once burned for billions of years and then died violently in a supernova that would have sterilized every planet within 100 light-years. What remained was this: a neutron star, a pulsar, the exposed, ultra-dense core of a dead star composed not of atoms in any conventional sense, but of neutrons packed so tightly that a single cubic centimeter of its material would weigh approximately 400 million metric tons on Earth's surface. It is not a star anymore. Stars produce light. Stars sustain fusion. This object does neither. It is a remnant, a scar left in the fabric of the galaxy by a cataclysm that has long since gone cold. But it is not inert. This particular remnant is spinning at 716 rotations per second. That figure requires deliberate consideration. 716 full rotations every second. Its equatorial surface is moving at approximately 24% of the speed of light. The structural integrity of this object is not maintained by any material strength. It is maintained purely by the binding force of its own gravitational field, holding itself together against centrifugal forces that would shred any known substance into vapor. It does not fly apart because the physics of gravity at this density will not permit it. It is locked into its own rotation by the same force that makes it lethal. The magnetic field of this object is between 10 to the power of 8 and 10 to the power of 9 Tesla. Earth's magnetic field measures approximately 50 microtesla at its surface. The differential is not a comparison. It is a categorical distinction between two entirely different classes of physical phenomenon. This magnetic field is so intense that it warps the geometry of electron orbitals in nearby atoms. It restructures the quantum mechanical behavior of matter at a fundamental level. If you were to approach within several hundred kilometers of this object, the magnetic field alone would kill you, not by burning you, but by distorting the biochemical processes in your cells at the atomic level before any heat was involved. The magnetic field does one more thing. It collimates the pulsar's radiation output into two narrow beams firing from the magnetic poles. These are not beams of visible light. They are not radio waves in any benign sense. These beams carry gamma radiation, hard X-rays, and streams of relativistic charged particles, including electrons and their antimatter counterparts, positrons. These beams travel at the speed of light. They carry energies measured in millions of electron volts per photon. A single square meter of the beam's cross-section delivers enough ionizing radiation per second to destroy the molecular structure of any biological tissue instantaneously and to begin measurable damage to metal alloys within hours. Because the pulsar is rotating at 716 times per second, these beams sweep the surrounding space like the blades of a saw turning in complete darkness. They do not aim, they do not select, they simply rotate and they fire, and they have been doing so for hundreds of millions of years. Something was placed in its path. The companion is a gas giant. Its mass is approximately 6 to 8 times that of Jupiter, placing it in the upper boundary of the planetary classification. It formed, most likely, around a different star, a progenitor system that predates the pulsar's existence. It is ancient. Its hydrogen and helium envelope accumulated over hundreds of millions of years in a protoplanetary disk, building layer by layer under the slow accumulation of gravity. It is a world of superstorms and banded chemistry, of lightning discharges measured in petawatts, of internal pressures so extreme that hydrogen transitions through exotic metallic phases deep in its interior. Under different circumstances, in a different orbit around a stable main sequence star, It would persist for another 5 billion years without significant alteration. It is not in a different orbit. Through the violence of binary stellar evolution, through a sequence of gravitational dynamics that unfolded over geological timescales, this planet came to orbit the pulsar. Its orbital radius is not measured in astronomical units, it is measured in fractions of a solar radius. It orbits closer to the pulsar than Mercury orbits our Sun. Its orbital period is measured in hours. A year on this world lasts less than a single Earth day. At this distance, it is gravitationally locked. Tidal forces have long since synchronized its rotation to its orbital period. One hemisphere permanently faces the pulsar. One hemisphere is locked in eternal shadow. The planet cannot turn away. It cannot rotate on its own axis to distribute the incoming energy. The day side, the hemisphere facing the pulsar, receives the full, unattenuated output of that rotating beam every time the beam completes its arc through this orbital plane. The size comparison is worth stating plainly. The gas giant is roughly 140,000 kilometers in diameter. The pulsar is 20 kilometers in diameter. The planet is 7,000 times larger than the object destroying it. This is not a fair contest. There is no contest. There is only geometry, physics, and time. The planet's size is irrelevant. Mass does not confer immunity. Diameter is not armor. The pulsar's beam does not care about the proportions of what it strikes. It deposits energy at a rate the planet cannot compensate for through any natural process. The planet's fate was determined the moment its orbital path brought it within range. It has been dying since then. It will continue dying until there is nothing left to die. When the beam contacts the upper atmosphere, it does not illuminate it. There is no analogy here to sunlight. The uppermost layer of the gas giant's atmosphere, the exosphere, where hydrogen and helium exist as diffuse individual molecules at low density, absorbs the initial flux of gamma radiation. Absorption is not the correct word in the colloquial sense. These photons do not warm the gas gently. A gamma-ray photon in the energy range produced by this pulsar carries between 100 keV and several MeV of energy. When this photon strikes a hydrogen atom, the interaction is not thermal in the conventional sense. The photon transfers its energy to an electron, ejecting it from the atom entirely in a process called photoionization. The electron, now free and highly energetic, proceeds to ionize adjacent atoms. The cascade begins. This is gamma-ray saturation. The beam delivers so many ionizing photons per second per square meter that the photoionization cascade propagates downward through the atmosphere faster than the gas can respond through any conventional thermal mechanism. The atmosphere does not heat gradually from the top down. It is ionized violently and nearly instantaneously across a column depth extending thousands of kilometers into the planetary envelope. What was hydrogen is now plasma, electrons and protons, separated, no longer bound. The temperature in the irradiated column rises not to hundreds of degrees or thousands, but to tens of thousands of Kelvin in the upper layers and beyond in the deeper, denser strata, where the beam's energy is absorbed over shorter path lengths. This is thermal ablation. The material is not simply heated, it is phase transitioned past gas, past plasma equilibrium, into a state where the thermal velocity of particles in the upper column exceeds the escape velocity of the planet. Escape velocity for a gas giant of this mass is approximately 60 kilometers per second at the upper atmosphere. The thermal velocity of protons in a plasma at 50,000 Kelvin is on the order of 20 to 30 kilometers per second. At 200,000 Kelvin, proton thermal velocities exceed escape velocity. The beam is driving the irradiated atmosphere well past this threshold. The gas is not merely hot, it is unbound. Gravity loses its claim on this material. Simultaneously, the positron component of the beam, the antimatter particles, are annihilating on contact with electrons in the atmosphere. Each annihilation event produces 2 gamma-ray photons at 511 keV each. The irradiated column is not only receiving energy from the beam, it is generating secondary gamma-ray flux internally through matter-antimatter annihilation. The column becomes its own radiation source. The beam has seeded the atmosphere with a self-reinforcing ionization mechanism. A blowtorch does not describe this adequately. A blowtorch implies a manageable directed flame. This is an atmospheric pressure cooker being pierced repeatedly by a rotating blade of high-energy radiation that rearms itself with secondary emission on every pass. The day side of the planet glows, not in visible light, though visible light is produced. It glows in X-rays. It glows in gamma rays. It radiates energy across the electromagnetic spectrum in a depth fluorescence that would be detectable from thousands of light years away. The beam passes. The pulsar completes another fraction of its rotation. In 1/716th of a second, it returns. From a sufficient distance, the gas giant no longer looks like a planet. It has a tail. The superheated ionized gas liberated from the upper atmosphere does not simply expand uniformly into space. The geometry of the system, the pulsar's gravity, the planet's orbital velocity, the direction of the beam's irradiation, and the interaction with the pulsar's own stellar wind of relativistic particles all combine to sculpt the escaping material into a coherent stream. The planet is bleeding, and the blood flows in a specific direction. This tail is not thin. Early in the destruction process, mass loss rates for Black Widow Pulsar companions are estimated between 10 to the power of -10 and 10 to the power of -8 solar masses per year. Translate that into concrete terms, the planet is losing something between 100 trillion and 10 quadrillion kilograms of mass annually. Every year, continuously. Billions of tons of atmosphere stripped from the planet's gravity well and injected into the surrounding space every single second. The tail extends for millions of kilometers. In some observed Black Widow systems, the ablated material tail has been detected at lengths exceeding the orbital radius of the system itself. The planet is dragging a comet-like shroud that dwarfs its own body by a factor of hundreds in linear scale. This tail is not inert. It is hot. It is ionized. It scatters the pulsar's radiation, creating complex emission structures visible in radio and X-ray observations. The tail pulses in brightness as the pulsar beam sweeps through it. The escaping atmosphere is lit up, re-irradiated, and partially re-ionized even after it has fled the planet, as though the pulsar is unwilling to stop processing the material even once it has been released. The planet's albedo, its reflective properties, are now completely irrelevant to its energy budget. The planet is not reflecting radiation, it is absorbing it, converting it to thermal energy, and radiating it back as a broad-spectrum emission source. The atmosphere is not a shield, it is fuel. At the leading edge of the orbit, where the planet plows through the pulsar's particle wind, a bow shock forms. A compression zone of plasma where the planet's remaining magnetic field, weakened now, increasingly unable to deflect the incoming flux, interacts with the pulsar's outflow. The bow shock is not protecting the planet. It is a surface of friction and energy deposition, additional heating, additional ionization. The planet is being sandpapered from the front by its own orbital motion through the very environment that is simultaneously destroying it from above. There is no side of this planet that is not in contact with something that is killing it. Consider the interior of the planet during this process. The day side, facing the pulsar, has a temperature in its upper atmosphere of tens of thousands of Kelvin. The night side, shielded by the planet's own bulk, has a temperature in the range of a few thousand Kelvin. The temperature differential between day and night terminator is among the most extreme in any known planetary context. This differential is not stable. Atmospheric systems cannot exist in stable configuration across a gradient this severe. The result is a wind regime that has no analog in our solar system. On the day side, the extreme heating drives violent atmospheric expansion. The gas wants to move away from the heat source, laterally across the terminator into the cooler night side. This lateral movement is not a breeze. The pressure differential driving it is measured in orders of magnitude. Wind speeds of 10,000 to 20,000 kilometers per hour are not implausible in this regime. These winds are supersonic. They do not simply move gas from one hemisphere to another. They carry kinetic energy that translates to frictional heating at boundaries between atmospheric layers. They create shock fronts where supersonic flows encounter denser material. The interior of this atmosphere is a continuous supersonic detonation event, propagating laterally around a planet that cannot rotate away from its source of agony. At the molecular level, in whatever remains of the atmosphere's molecular composition, the ionizing radiation has long since destroyed most molecular bonds. Molecular hydrogen, H2, which constitutes the bulk of a gas giant's envelope, has a bond dissociation energy of approximately 4.5 electron volts. The gamma-ray photons arriving from the pulsar carry between 100,000 and several million electron volts. There is no molecular hydrogen in the irradiated column. There are only individual protons and electrons. The chemistry of this atmosphere is gone. The molecular structure has been reduced to its constituent parts by a radiation field that exceeds the chemistry's tolerance by a factor of 10,000. The remaining atmospheric structure is maintained only by gravity and by the inertia of fluid dynamics. The fluid dynamics are violent. Every physical process operating in this atmosphere is operating at the edge of the material's ability to remain gravitationally bound. The atmosphere is not circulating in any stable sense. It is fracturing. Layers are peeling away. The beam passes, heats, ionizes, and the cycle repeats. The atmosphere is not a continuous fluid envelope. It is a disintegrating structure, losing coherence at its upper boundaries with every rotation of the pulsar, falling apart from the outside in.
The upper envelope is gone. The hydrogen-helium exosphere, the troposphere, the successive atmospheric layers that constituted the planet's outermost several thousand kilometers of gas, these have been progressively stripped over the course of millions of years of irradiation. The pulsar is now irradiating the deeper layers. The beam is no longer interacting with diffuse gas. It is interacting with denser, hotter, more pressurized material. A gas giant of this mass has beneath its gaseous envelope a layer of liquid metallic hydrogen. This is hydrogen under pressures exceeding 1 megabar, where the material has transitioned to a state in which electrons are no longer bound to individual protons, but instead flow freely through the material in a manner analogous to a metal's conduction band. This material is not gas. It is a dense, electrically conductive fluid. Its thermal properties are different. Its response to irradiation is different. As the outer layers are stripped away, the pressure that sustained the metallic hydrogen layer decreases. Without the weight of the overlying atmosphere compressing it, the metallic hydrogen undergoes decompression. Decompression at these depths releases energy. The planet's interior is now participating in its own destruction as the removal of the outer layers triggers pressure release events in deeper strata. The planet is, in a thermodynamic sense, unzipping. The structural integrity of each layer was dependent on the pressure exerted by the layers above it. Remove the layers, and the structure beneath becomes unstable. The beam is now boiling metallic hydrogen. This is a phase transition occurring under conditions that have no experimental laboratory analog. The metallic hydrogen is being driven to vaporize, to transition back to gaseous plasma, to be lifted out of the planet's gravity well and added to the tail. The rate of mass loss increases as denser material is exposed because the beam deposits more energy per unit volume in denser media. The more the planet is stripped, the faster it is stripped. This is the anatomy of planetary death. Not a sudden explosion, not a dramatic detonation visible in a single moment. A slow, systematic, layer-by-layer disassembly conducted by a rotating beam of radiation
that never tires, never misses, and never stops. The skeleton of the planet is being exposed to open space. The core, which has spent billions of years under pressures of tens of megabars, insulated by thousands of kilometers of overlying atmosphere, is now approaching proximity to a vacuum. The planet's interior is becoming the planet's exterior. The core is not yet visible, but it will be. The stripped material does not simply disperse into the interstellar medium. The pulsar's gravity is substantial. The escape velocity from the pulsar's surface is approximately half the speed of light. At the orbital distance of the gas giant, the pulsar's gravitational influence is significant. A fraction of the ablated material, the fraction that is not moving fast enough from the irradiation event to achieve escape velocity from the system, falls inward. It does not fall directly onto the pulsar. Angular momentum prevents that. Instead, it spirals. It forms a stream of infalling gas that wraps around the pulsar, circling it in decreasing orbits, building an accretion disk. This is the mechanism that created the millisecond pulsar in the first place. In the standard model of recycled pulsar formation, a pulsar in a binary system accretes mass from a companion, and the angular momentum transferred by the infalling material spins the pulsar up over millions of years to millisecond rotation rates. The pulsar currently destroying the gas giant may well have originally been spun up to its current rotation rate by accreting from the same companion in an earlier epoch, when the companion was a main sequence star and the mass transfer was Roche-Lobe overflow rather than violent ablation. The pulsar is eating the same companion it has been eating, in one form or another, for a very long time. The accretion disk glows. Infalling gas is compressed and heated as it spirals inward, reaching temperatures of millions of Kelvin in the inner disk. This emission is bright in X-rays. Observations of Black Widow Pulsar systems in X-ray wavelengths show this characteristic emission, the signature of a dead star consuming the boiled-off remnants of its companion. The disk rotates, heated by friction between orbital shells moving at different velocities. Viscosity transfers angular momentum outward and mass inward. The material migrates toward the pulsar's surface, and when it reaches the surface, it impacts at a significant fraction of the speed of light. The energy released in this impact is not trivial. It contributes to the pulsar's X-ray luminosity and may introduce additional variability in its spin rate. The planet built its mass over hundreds of millions of years from a protoplanetary disk. It accumulated hydrogen and helium atom by atom, molecule by molecule, under the slow, patient process of gravitational accretion. That same material is now being reverse processed. Gravity accumulated it. Gravity, in the form of the pulsar's field, combined with the thermal energy of ablation, is disassembling it. The planet's substance is being returned to a disk, a different disk, one in fatal proximity to an object from which there is no material recovery. The pulsar is not simply killing the planet, it is absorbing it, incorporating its mass. The boundary between predator and prey, between the dead star and the dying world, is not a clean line. It is a gradual gradient of infalling material, of increasing temperature and increasing radiation density, culminating at a surface where accretion events release energies that briefly rival the planet's own total thermal output. This is cosmic cannibalism rendered in physics. There is no ambiguity in the process. There is no uncertainty about the outcome. The planet is being converted into pulsar material. It is being incorporated into the very object that destroyed it. What remains is a core. The hydrogen is gone. The helium is gone. The metallic hydrogen layers have been progressively stripped and accreted. What the pulsar's beam cannot reach without first boiling away everything above it has taken millions of years to expose, but the exposure is complete. What remains orbiting the pulsar is not a gas giant in any meaningful sense. It is a dense, rocky, or icy remnant, the original core of the world, compressed over billions of years by the weight of the gas that no longer exists above it. Theoretical models suggest that the final remnant of a gas giant subjected to this degree of mass stripping may be a body composed primarily of carbon under extreme pressure. Extreme pressure applied to carbon over geological timescales and then slowly released through the removal of overlying mass produces one outcome: crystalline carbon, a diamond. The remnant of this gas giant, after billions of years of slow construction and millions of years of systematic destruction, may be a diamond the approximate size of Earth, orbiting a 20-kilometer-wide dead star in the space between the stars. It orbits in silence. The pulsar's beam still passes over it, but there is nothing left to ablate. The surface of the remnant absorbs the radiation without significant thermal consequence. The beam passes, and the remnant turns slightly in its locked orbit, and the beam passes again, and there is no tail of glowing gas trailing behind it, because there is no gas. The comet that the planet became during its death, that long glowing trail of its own evaporating substance draped across the star system, is gone. It was accreted, or it dispersed, or it was processed by the pulsar's wind into something unrecognizable. The system is quiet now, quieter than it has been in millions of years. The universe does not narrate this. There is no record kept of the planet's former size, of the storms that once churned in its upper atmosphere, of the chemical gradients in its banded cloud layers, of whatever transient structures formed and dissolved in the turbulence of its long, uneventful existence before the beam found it. The process of destruction generated no signal that carried any information about the thing being destroyed. The X-ray emission from the accretion disk was a measurement of energy, not of identity. The tail was a spectroscopic signature of hydrogen and helium, not a record of a world. The planet's entire history, its formation, its billions of years of quiet orbital mechanics, its accumulated mass and complexity, was converted without comment into heat, radiation, and pulsar spin rate. Celestial mechanics is not a system with a concept of loss. Mass is not mourned. It is reallocated. The gas giant's hydrogen was once stellar material in the progenitor star's core, processed by fusion over billions of years, distributed in a supernova, reaccreted into the companion star's disk, accumulated by the gas giant, stripped by the pulsar, accreted onto the pulsar's surface. The material has changed form repeatedly. The planet was one form. It is no longer that form. The universe has no preference between forms. It does not register the transition from a world to a disk to a surface decretion event as a loss, because the framework for registering loss does not exist in the physics that governs these processes. The remnant orbits. The pulsar rotates. The beam sweeps the vacuum where the atmosphere used to be. There is nothing in the beam's path that responds to it now. Nothing that glows, nothing that heats, nothing that bleeds. The execution is complete. Not declared complete, not acknowledged as complete, simply complete, in the way that a chemical reaction is complete when the limiting reagent is exhausted. The reaction ran its course. The reagent is gone. The pulsar does not slow. The remnant does not drift. The system continues in its new configuration without adjustment.